So now I'm going to start removing our 10mm bolts all the way around, or excuse me, I'm going to start removing our 8mm bolts around here. We've got a 12mm bolt here, it's a little bit larger, and then we are going to have to remove the dipstick and the drain plug, and I'm going to flip that up maybe at this time and do that. Three 8mm nuts, excuse me, 3 8mm bolts there. Remove one, 3 there, and we'll just be able to take and remove this. All right, and that is sealed up with an O-ring. Make sure that's in good condition. You can see there metal shavings. It's pretty clear we had some transmission issues or some bearing issues of some sort. You've got a screen in here we're going to remove. Make sure that that's all cleaned out, but we've got a small handful of shavings and debris down in here that we need to get cleaned out. As far as removing our crankcase, splitting our crankcase, we don't actually have to pull any bolts that are in here, but we're going to do that when we go and clean this crankcase up to go back together. So at this point, I'm going to take and start removing bolts around this crankcase. Alright, one thing to note before you go to split this case, we do have a pin that comes in right here. If you remember this gear that we pulled off of your crankshaft, you've got a pin, like sort of a woodruff key style pin that goes into this crankshaft, holds this gear from moving, from pivoting. You want to make sure you remove that, or when you slide this crankshaft out of that bearing there, it's going to get caught. It's going to give you some grief. So pull that out. I'm going to lay this crankcase down and tap on the end there. Using a rubber mallet, I like to hang on to one side and then tap on the other. You can see we're already splitting apart. Sometimes you get held up in an area. If that's the case, like so we're splitting apart here, which is going to be pretty obvious why, because we're tapping here. But if our back for some reason isn't splitting at all, or you can see some stress there, you want to double check that you've got all those bolts if you haven't already. So we'll go ahead and start tapping on the back shaft here. All right, we flip this around. What I'm actually going to do, go ahead and turn it back around this way, laying it on this side. We've got more shafts sticking out of the other side. This side we've got a rear shaft here. We've got our clutch shaft here and our crankshaft here. So I have a feeling that a lot of our gears are going to try to stay on that other side there. So once we get enough distance in there by using a rubber mallet and spreading that open, we can take and just kind of pivot that with our hands, try to get all those gears to stay in one side or the other. Now if we're finding that we can lift up on this side and all of our gears are coming with, then we're going to want to flip this crankcase over so that our gears are going to set kind of, we use gravity to hold all that together. So I'm going to go ahead and set these with our clutch pack there. And I think everything's going to come out fairly smoothly. So there is the inside of that crankcase on that Quadrunner 250. Set that aside there. We've got our prop shaft running through here and our yoke set up here. We're going to go ahead and, like I said, I've showed you several videos how to pull these yokes apart and replace those U-joints. So probably no need for me to do that again. I'll put a link below for those videos, but we got a prop shaft coming out here, going to our front differential, our bevel gear, some people call them a transfer gear. Here, these two gears, when you purchase this from Suzuki, will come as a set. They're very, very expensive. They do come as a set because they work together. They start meshing together. You want to make sure that you buy those new together as opposed to one used one, one new one, or random used ones. They're going to wear differently, so one's going to cause the other one to wear quicker than the other if that's the case. Sort of like a chain and sprocket, you just replace those all at the same time. That way everything is wearing together. So got our shift linkage up here. You've got more shift forks on these posts here. You got your shift drum here, crankshaft here. And we'll pull this prop shaft out so you can see what that looks like. And then this gear we're able just to pull out. Again, our transmission that we set over here is going to ride on that shaft there. This larger gear sits in the back. These are where your axles come into on either side. So that's our larger gear in the rear. And then our transmission we just pull out. And I try to keep as much of this together as possible. When you drop something like this, just make sure you right away put that back where it goes so you remember exactly how it's set out there. And then our shift arm here. I'm going to pull this fork out here. I just go along and see what parts can be pulled out together, because you don't want to just take and jerk this all out of here. You're going to have pieces going everywhere, but if you can get to a point where you're removing a handful of things at once, that's great. Shift drum there. Our star sits on top of that. Now I think we're going to have enough room to pull out this shifter arm here. We've got a sensor that actually sits right on the end of that. And then these forks are going to be able to be pulled out now at this time. Pull the shaft up, slide the forks at an angle, and slide them out. I'm going to slide this one back on. We've got our forks out. Now we've got our transmission. Should be able to keep these as a set. And I kind of grab farthest bottom point that I can. Just looking a real quick glance here, none of these gears are worn. So I think our issue that I showed you earlier, our transmission on the other side underneath that side case, it wasn't going to be the issue. We wouldn't have had to split this case, but now I can inspect everything, get it on here, make sure all the specs are right. We can go through and replace seals, stuff like that. Put this back together so you can see that whole process. To get the crank out, this is going to be a good crank. I've saved the end of that crank shaft using that flywheel puller that I showed you earlier. Check that video out. We'll just take and tap that out. You never want to use more force than that to get a crankshaft out, especially the smaller end here. Could damage that, bend this, cause some serious issues there. So there is our crankshaft. Make sure that that's straight, make sure it's in good condition, make sure there's no excessive play on there. And then our crankcase here is ready to be cleaned up. We'll throw it in the cleaner and get it nice and shiny, get it ready to go back together, replace those bearings and seals, and get everything ready to go. So this video has been helpful. Make sure you subscribe to our channel, hit the thumbs up button for us. We appreciate you guys sharing this video and other videos with all your friends and family. Make sure you let everybody know who we are, what we do. Going to work with you guys to repair all these ATVs. Thanks a lot.